And welcome into the Week 8 edition of the Consistently Cashin podcast here at BigGuyFantasySports.com. I am Colby Conway at Colby R. Conway over on X, and with me here, as always, Mr. Ron Rigney, sporting a shirt that I actually was wearing yesterday. So we were just one day off from being twinsies on a podcast here. But how are you, Ron?
I'm good, man. I think I actually had this year's on yesterday as well. So I'm going through my entire Kings Classic wardrobe, if you will. So, yeah, coming off a tough week, did not earn that clutch game last week. I did get at least one of my props right, though. So I was happy about that. I got you Kate Otten over 50 yards, but I also didn't predict the carnage that was going to happen on to the Bucks wide receiver position. But we got you that. We're going to get you back on track this week. I think we were talking a little bit off air, and if you've looked at the lineups, I think you'll agree that it's a little bit easier to build a lineup this week. So let's get after it.
It certainly is. So let's start with the quarterback position, since that's what's on the screen already. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, some of the premier dudes at the position here. And you also got Jordan Love. You got you have the three quarterbacks who run and throw, and then you have the three pocket passers that are basically all right there beneath them in Love, Burrow, and Stroud. What did you make of the quarterback position this week? Some favorite plays? Who'd you ultimately end up settling on?
A couple guys at the top have some solid matchups. You got Hurts there against Cincinnati. I wanted to get Jordan Love in there. I got a lot of love for Jordan Love, if you will, because he solid pick in your yearly leagues, but he's come through for us when we went with him in DraftKings. I just couldn't get it to fit price wise. Had to drop down a little bit. The guy I settled on was Kirk Cousins a little bit further down to 6,200. I know they don't have Baker Mayfield doesn't have a lot of guys to throw to, but I feel like that Bucs secondary can be thrown on quite a bit. And I feel like the Bucs are going to have to find somebody to throw to with Atlanta coming in, and Kirk Cousins, Drake London, Kyle Pitts at all. I just felt like the price matchup was the best combination for what I could fit in my lineup, so that's where I settled.
And I don't mind that. Tampa Bay allowing the second most fantasy points per game. And the other guy that you mentioned, Jordan Love, is going up against a defense that has allowed the most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. For me, where I ultimately settled in, I really want to go CJ Stroud just because of one, Texans fandom, but two, he has been simply very, very good, not only at home in his career, but against the AFC South, and not just against the AFC South, but also against Indy. He's had good numbers. I'm pulling up what I wrote over in an article I wrote this week. So Stroud at home for his career, 311 passing yards per game, 21-5 touchdown interception ratio. Stroud versus AFC South opponents, 289 yards per game, 13-0 touchdown to interception ratio. Stroud versus Indy, 294 yards per game, 6-0 touchdown to interception ratio. So we will reference that again at the wide receiver position. For me at quarterback, I am with you. If I could get to Jordan Love, that was where I got to. If I couldn't get to Jordan Love, I was actually dropping down close to where you were. Call me crazy. I know it's against the consistency concept, but I really like Tua against Arizona. I think Mike McDaniel's out to make a point of that, like, hey, my system does work. Tua just knows how to do it right. Arizona's allowed the fifth most fantasy points per game. So I really like Tua. And because both of his wide receivers, because they've been so bad in recent weeks, are so dirt cheap. So you could look there. Other than that, I'll kind of give you some props here, Ron, although it scares the crap out of me. I really like Anthony Richardson because there's only one team he ever seems to play really well against, and it's Houston.
Yep.
There's something about Anthony Richardson against the Houston defense. I mean, even this year, I know he threw a pretty bad pick in the first game, overthrew a couple dudes.
But yeah, it was easily his best game this season by far, and it wasn't even that great when you look at the numbers, but when you look at yards and touchdowns, it was definitely the best game he's had in 2024, no doubt.
9 for 19 in that game, but he had 212 yards on 9 completions, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, and then on the ground, where's the game log? I think he probably ran. You can run it. Mobile quarterbacks tend to give Houston fits because their pass rushers just get upfield so darn fast. It's kind of frustrating. 6 for 56 and a touchdown in that game. So in that game against Houston this year was his most passing yards in a game this season. It was his only multi-passing touchdown game. And it was tied for it has his only rushing touchdown and tied for the most yards in a game. So we have that. And if you go back to last year, Anthony Richardson against Houston, week 2 last year, that was the game. I think he got injured but he was 6 of 10 for 56 yards, but he had 3 carries and 2 touchdowns before he
Mm-hmm.
left injury in
Yeah.
that. And then he missed the other game. And then this year, again, we just talked about that. So he just always seems to play well against Houston. And the other one I like, if you're going to really go bargain bin, is Bo Nix, just because Carolina is talentless on defense. So
And he can run.
Go ahead.
And he can run a little bit. A little deceiving with Bo Nix. You're talking about Anthony Richardson. If you've seen Bo Nix play at all, dude can tuck it and carry it and get down the field as well.
Yep. I mean, 10 for 7. He got 60 plus in the last 2 weeks and 5 games with 25 plus. So we certainly like that. Let's head over to the running back position here. Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Big Bad Ken Walker, and Joe Mixon at the top of the board. Jonathan Taylor also makes his return, but the Houston run defense has been okay at points this year. So what do you make of the running back position? Honestly, I didn't spend a lot of time here, and I paid up. So I'm curious what you ended up settling on.
I wanted to go Ken Walker all day long. Couldn't get him in there. So I'm hoping when we build this other lineup, we can find a way to put him in. But towards that top, you've got guys like Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, Jared Cook, all have solid matchups. But Ken Walker against Buffalo, that's the one that you want to go with. I went down a little bit again, went in that six grand range. So if we got to save a little bit of cash, I went with Kareem Hunt, and I went with Javonte Williams. I think Javonte Williams finally looks like he is all the way back from that knee. I love me some Audric Estime on that bench, but he's not unseating Javonte Williams right now unless he gets hurt. But if you've seen Javonte play, it looks like the burst is there a little bit. He's catching the ball. They're having to get him the football all that they can. And for $6,000 against that Carolina defense, you just mentioned Bo Nix. Javonte Williams is right there.
You mentioned most of the guys that were on my short list at running back. So my short list at running back: Kenneth Walker, Joe Mixon, Breece Hall. I wasn't on J.K. Dobbins early in the week. I've kind of faded as I've gone from there and went down a little bit farther to Kareem Hunt and Devon Achane and Javonte Williams. That is my short list at running back. I haven't really looked anywhere else, if I'm being honest. Rashad White would have been more interesting if Bucky Irving wasn't going to play because he didn't practice for 2 days, but then he came back and they said he was expected to play. So I think Rashad White steps up as a de facto receiver for them, kind of like he's always been throughout his career. But ultimately, those first 6 or 7 guys, that's my short list. I've tried to build where I've gone Walker, Mixon, and Breece Hall, and my 2 running backs and flex. It gets a little tough.
It's tough.
You probably have to swap out one of them for like a Kareem Hunt or a Javonte Williams. So we'll see what we end up doing there. But I like all of that because when you look at it, Carolina, so for Javonte Williams, Carolina has allowed the most fantasy points. Well, Buffalo's allowed the second. Guess who faces them? Kenneth Walker. Who's behind them? New England. Guess who plays them? Breece Hall. And then you look, and then Indy struggle at times. They've gotten a little bit better throughout the run, but Joe Mixon
Still
is a lock for 20 plus touches right now because that's all they have right now. So that's the running back position. Nobody else really does it for me there. So let's head on over to wide receiver. A lot of big names here, and a lot of the big names like Amon-Ra, not in a great matchup. Then you got Terry McLaurin, who may or may not have Jaden Daniels, but I want no part of that Chicago secondary. Stephon Diggs, Drake London, AJ Brown up at the top there as well. What did you make of the wide receiver position this week? Some of your favorite plays, and ultimately, where did you settle in?
I mean, you got Jamar Chase there at the top with a great matchup, but there's so much red on this wide receiver page as well. A lot of these top guys not there. So you got to me, I scrolled down a little bit. Where I ended up going, I went with Kirk Cousins, so I settled on Drake London at 7,200 against Tampa. Again, if you watch them Monday night, you watch what Baltimore was able to do to them through the air. I don't think that Kirk Cousins is going to have much of an issue putting up a couple of scores here. Went Jaden Reed because I have to get a piece of that Green Bay offense somewhere against Jacksonville. Would love to get Jordan Love to work. Also didn't mind Josh Jacobs at running back if you can get him, but I'd rather have that passing attack. So I'm with Jaden Reed there because he appears to be fully healthy, no injury designation. And then I had to go ultra cheap for my third guy. I went with a guy that could boom or bust, but DeAndre Hopkins got traded. Tyler Boyd is the guy that I went for $3,900. He's the only guy left there other than he's with Calvin Ridley on the other side. They're not great through the air, but if he can get us something that pays up for or that goes past that $3,900, I feel okay about it. But that's kind of what I had to do based on what I built. So hoping he would get me a touchdown there, but ultra cheap at $3,900.
Slot receivers have killed Detroit all year. They're allowing the second most fantasy points per game overall to wide receivers. So despite Tennessee can't throw in the ball, I'm with you. Tyler Boyd was in a lot of my lineups as well, just because I needed some value. And it may be ugly. It may be a pretty boring 6 for 60, but that's that's almost 3x our money. So
We'll
we will
take it.
definitely take that. I do like Drake London as well. Went for $150 and a touchdown against Tampa Bay last time, and ultimately he's just been as consistent as they come. He's got 50 plus yards in all but one game this year. He scored a touchdown in all but two, with at least 6 receptions in all but one game. Basically just removed week 1, and he's been rock solid as a fantasy wide receiver. So I do like me some Drake London. I like Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell this week just because of what I mentioned with Mr. CJ Stroud at home. I'm inclined to play Tyreek Hill at 7,000 because I think this is the last week we see him this low. As long as 2 is healthy, there's no way DraftKings will continue rolling out Tyreek Hill at $7,000. Love Jaden Reed. I'm with you there. I like DJ Moore a little bit, but I don't think he's it's just not quite. If we're in that range, we're going up or we're going down. He's just kind of in no man's land. Tank Dell at 63 is interesting for me. If we come down a little bit, I like Romeo Dobbs a good bit. I'd basically just like anybody against Jacksonville. They have a pulse and they play against Jaguars. You can convince me on them. Jalen Waddle at 5,400. If we can't for some reason get Tyreek Hill, I think you can go down to him. And again, with Tua, he's just a totally different wide receiver. And I really like Ladd McConkey, but his status seems truly up in the air. He did get to practice limited at the end of the week, but man, I wish he was full practice because I think he could destroy this New Orleans secondary because they struggle in the slot, and McConkey is quite good there. So that's what I'm thinking at the wide receiver position. I expect us to have to use Tyler Boyd, if I'm being honest. Just hearing how we talked about running backs and we didn't really like many cheap ones, we're going to need a little help at the value spot for wide receiver. But head over to tight end here. Obviously, Brock Bowers and Travis Kelce going up against one another, 1 and 2. And Kansas City's been the worst in the league this year against tight ends. So I'd love to get Brock Bowers, but man, that's a wide receiver price tag for Bowers. But he's been darn good of late and probably worth it, if I'm being honest.
He has been very good. I question that Las Vegas quarterback room a little bit. I love me some Gardner Minshew, but they have not been good. And, they got rid of Devontae Adams. So does Kansas City try to take Brock Bowers away and rely on those guys on the outside to beat him? I don't know, but at $6,100, couldn't get that to work. Drop down a little bit. Dalton Kincaid's interesting against Seattle. They haven't been so great, but again, the guy that I settled on is Dalton Schultz with your Texans. Indy is 6th worst against the tight end as far as allowing fantasy points. And you mentioned all the things. I don't need to make the argument anymore other than, what you mentioned about CJ Stroud having success against Indianapolis, and they haven't been good against defending the tight end. I know, there's a lot of mouths to feed in Houston, but again, he's all the way down at $4,100. So again, a nice value there to go right along with that $3,900 Tyler Boyd.
Yeah, other ones I like if we're paying up a little bit. I like David Njoku, and I like both sides of that Green Bay Jacksonville game with Evan Ingram and Tucker Kraft. I don't mind Schultz if we can get up to Kraft. I think I would go with him. His upside just seems higher. Head on over to defense. That's all I got for the tight end position. There's not really much to say there. So defense, I love the Lions defense. They can get after people even without Aiden Hutchinson in Tennessee. It's just been a gold mine this year. But ultimately, I think if we have the money, I'm going with Denver because Bryce Young's back. Deontay Johnson is not playing. That his injury seemed to get a little bit worse once the news of Bryce Young starting instead of Andy Dalton broke. That injury he had seemed to get a little bit worse. And I also like Kansas City. Honestly, I like a lot of the upper tier ones. If I have to drop lower, maybe the Chargers defense. Like, I don't know. Defense is a little bit odd. Or you might be able to sell me on the Bears, but I'm gonna need confirmation that Jaden Daniels isn't playing if we're gonna go down that low. But what do you make of the defensive position that we have to fill?
So it was a matter of how much money do I have left and who can I afford? And it was $3,300. And I went with the aforementioned Chargers just because I believe, if I'm looking at it correctly, Spencer Rattler starting again this week. They do have Chris Olave back there without Rashid Shaheed. But again, it's a Jim Harbaugh defense. They can get after it a little bit. They haven't been great. They haven't been terrible. But I think at home, I think Spencer Rattler starting on the road coming cross country. I like that matchup at $3,300.
Derek Carr did not practice all week and is listed as doubtful. So I'm assuming we're going to see Spencer Rattler. So defense, we'll figure out what money we have and we'll go from there. So let's go ahead and let's get this lineup built. We each get one player that we get to lock in. No ifs, ands, or buts. No questions about it. I'll let you go first. Who is your guy that we get to lock into this lineup?
Going to be 7,200 at wide receiver, Mr. Drake London.
All right. I am with you there. I'm going to lock in Breece Hall. He's the usage is too darn good of late, and the matchup is too darn good to look anywhere else. So let's go ahead from now. So basically what we could do, we still have stacks open. So like if we put Tyreek Hill and we go Tua and Tyreek, we can still put Tyreek in and go Cousins in London. What do you, I mean, the money's negligible between Cousins and Tua. It doesn't really matter. It's $100.
Yeah.
So it's kind of up to you with the upside. And I mean, I think that game environment for Atlanta, Tampa Bay could be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I like either one, but let's just go with the one that's $100 cheaper. Let's go Tua just because he's 6,100, and let's stack him with Tyreek because I agree with what you said there. I was looking at Tyreek as well. He is not going to be $7,000 past this week if Tua stays healthy. But if we need $100, we know where we can come save it.
Yep, let's throw Tyreek Hill in there. Do you want to throw Boyd in just to give us the value now? Because I think we're going to try to pay up again at running back. If I had,
I think we're going to have to with everything that we like this week. I think we're going to have to do that. So go ahead and throw him in there.
Yep. Let's leave tight end open because I would like to try to get up from Schultz if possible. So running back. So do you want to try Ken Walker? See where it shakes out, and then we can always save a quick $1,500 going down to like Kareem Hunt. So like we can
let's do that. Yeah, because Ken Walker's gonna be lights out this week for sure.
We got 10-7 for a tight end flex in defense. So tight end's gonna have to be cheap. Let's throw Schultz in.
All right.
66. Yeah, this is gonna get a little bit interesting. Defense, let's just go Chargers. 3,300 for a flex. I have a feeling this is gonna be pretty bad. I mean, there's Cedric Tillman.
They don't have. Okay, one thing I wanted to look up here, and I don't know. Maybe I should know my depth charts a little bit better here. But notice that Dallas Goedert is out. I noticed that Cincy is not great against a tight end. Now I know that they have some big time receivers there, but is it Grant Calcaterra, the tight end? That's a possibility.
1 for 5 last week.
Okay.
But you're right. Cincy is bad. That is a tight.
Yeah, I'm just trying to save some cash here.
Here's the thing, like right now we can go Schultz and Tillman.
Okay.
Or if we put in Calcaterra, we have $4,200. Let me just pick a somewhat reasonable player here. I'd say Zach Ertz, but it looks a little bit different now. I think we'd still be $100 off. So it would be like, do you like Schultz and Tillman more or Calcaterra and Bateman? At least Schultz gets a couple targets a week.
Yeah, I was gonna say I like Tillman and Schultz a little better than that.
Yeah, and Tillman's coming off a big game, and Jameis is there. We all know he's not afraid to throw the ball around the yard. So that would give us Tua, Breece Hall, Ken Walker, Drake London, Tyreek Hill, Tyler Boyd, Dalton Schultz, Cedric Tillman, and the Chargers defense. I like it.
Yeah, I think we did good. We got a lot of the guys that we mentioned that we said we didn't know if we were going to be able to get. So at the end of the day, I think it's a nice job. Well done, sir. Well done.
Let's go ahead and lock that in. So that will be the Week 8 consistently Cashin lineup. Make sure you head over to bigguyfantasysports.com and check out all the great content we have over there, from Who's Not, trade targets, consistency information, player props. We got it all over there for you. Ron, let everyone know where they can find you and everything you got going on.
Yeah, Ron Rigney on the Twitter machine, the X machine, whatever it is that you will call it. BigGuyFantasySports.com did something a little different this week. Went with some trade targets, went with some guys that could be sent out of town as we got the trade deadline coming up on November 5th. Couple intriguing names. Went over some guys that could get traded. We also went over how that impacts them on their new team and how it impacts the guys that they leave behind. You'll hear Tyler Boyd mentioned in that article, I think, as well. So go check that out. Go check out everything. We did the consistently cashing right now. You guys did the prop bets yesterday. Bob and I did the consistency show Thursday night. All the great articles. Go check it out at BigGuyFantasySports.com.
Absolutely. BigGuyFantasySports.com is the place to be this fantasy football season. So make sure you check it all out. Check out my Who's Hot, Who's Not article. Check out the player prop article and podcast, Prop It Like It's Hot podcast and article. Check that out and give me a follow over on X at Colby R. Conway. Ron, I'd wish you best of luck this weekend, but I don't want your Colts to win. So I'll reluctantly wish you luck in our last showdown of the regular season this year. Last year, they made us wait till week 18 for Texans and Colts again. And this year, they're like, screw it. They're both playing both their games by week 8. I don't know what's up with that, but it is what it is there. So good luck, and good luck to all of you out there using this lineup. We're looking to get it back in the clutch game department here. Once again, head over to bigguyfantasysports.com. Give Ron a follow on X. Give me a follow over on X. And we will see you next week for the Week 9 edition of the Consistently Cashin podcast.